Have you ever been in a situation where you wish the ground would open up and swallow you whole? Picture this, a packed graduation auditorium, hundreds of proud families celebrating their children's achievements, but in the middle of all that joy, one mother, a powerful CEO worth millions, sits helpless as her autistic son's cries pierce through the ceremony. Every eye turns toward them, every whisper cuts like a knife. She's faced hostile boardrooms, billion-dollar deals, impossible deadlines, but nothing prepared her for this moment of public judgment. Just when she thought the worst had happened, a single father stood up, his suit clean and pressed, yet strikingly casual against the elegance around him, and began walking toward her. What he does next doesn't just quiet the room, it changes two families forever. This is the story of how one act of unexpected kindness bridged two completely different worlds and proved that sometimes the most unthinkable thing isn't what you do, but what grows from a single moment of compassion. Before we continue, please tell us, where in the world are you tuning in from?
The screaming began during the principal's opening remarks. Jason Hilton pressed his hands against his ears, but the sound of 300 people applauding felt like thunder inside his head. His mother, Haley, leaned closer, her voice barely audible over his cries. "It's okay, sweetheart. Just breathe with me. In and out. In and out." But Jason couldn't hear her anymore. The lights were too bright, the voices too loud. Everything was too much. "Stop! Stop! Stop!" Jason rocked back and forth in his seat, his voice rising above the ceremonial music. Heads turned, first one, then another, until half the auditorium was staring at their row. Haley felt every gaze like a physical weight pressing down on her shoulders. "Ma'am, maybe you should take him outside," whispered the woman behind them, her tone sharp with annoyance. Haley's chest tightened. She'd heard those words before, at restaurants, at school events. At nearly every place, she tried to include Jason in the experiences other children enjoyed. "He's fine," she said firmly, though her voice shook. "He just needs a moment."
Jason's cries grew louder. His small fists beat against his thighs as he struggled with sensations only he could feel. The expensive suit Haley had bought for this special day was already wrinkled from his movements. "Some people have no consideration," muttered another parent, loud enough for Haley to hear. That's when she saw him, a man in a simple suit, too casual for the occasion, standing up 3 rows away. He wasn't tall or imposing, his hands looked rough, as if he worked with them every day, and he was walking directly toward them. Haley braced herself for another complaint, another suggestion that they leave. She pulled Jason closer, ready to defend her son against whatever judgment the stranger was about to deliver. But the man didn't speak to her. He crouched down until he was at eye level with Jason, his movements slow and deliberate. "Hey there, buddy. That's a lot of noise, isn't it?" Jason's screaming didn't stop, but his eyes shifted. Something in the man's tone was different. Calm, patient, understanding. "I know it feels like everything's too loud right now. Sometimes the world gets overwhelming. I get that." Haley stared, speechless. In 12 years of public meltdowns, no stranger had ever approached Jason like this. Most people either stared in horror or offered unsolicited advice about discipline. The man reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a wooden keychain carved into the shape of a fish. Simple, smooth, worn from handling. "This helps me when things feel too big," he said, holding it out. "Want to try holding it?" Jason's hands were shaking, but he reached out. The moment his fingers closed around the carved wood, something shifted. His breathing slowed. The screaming became softer crying, then quiet whimpers.
The auditorium fell silent, not the uncomfortable silence of judgment, but something else entirely. Wonder. The man stayed crouched there, his presence anchoring Jason in the storm of his overwhelm. He didn't try to fix anything or hurry the process. He just waited, patient as stone. "That's it," he murmured. "Just hold on to that. Feel how smooth it is." Jason turned the keychain over in his palm, his thumb tracing the carved lines. For the first time since the ceremony began, he looked calm. Haley felt tears she couldn't control sliding down her cheeks. She had tried everything: noise-canceling headphones, fidget toys, preparation strategies. Nothing had worked like this. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking. The man looked up at her then, and she saw something in his eyes she'd rarely encountered. Genuine understanding, not pity. "No need to thank me," he said quietly. "We all need a little help sometimes." He stood slowly, gave Jason one more gentle nod, and walked back to his seat. The ceremony continued, but Jason stayed calm, clutching the wooden fish like a lifeline. Across the aisle, a 12-year-old boy watched his father with quiet pride. Nathan had seen his dad do kind things before, but this felt different. Bigger somehow.
When the last graduate received their certificate and families began to disperse, Haley knew she couldn't let this moment pass. She had to find the man who'd reached her son when no one else could. She found him in the parking lot, unlocking a dented pickup truck that had seen better years. His son stood beside him, still in his graduation gown, a genuine smile lighting up his face. "Excuse me," Haley called out, her heels clicking on the asphalt as she approached. I wanted to thank you properly for what you did in there." The man turned, and she could see him taking in her appearance: the designer suit, the expensive jewelry, the car keys to a luxury sedan in her hand. But his expression didn't change. No judgment, no calculation, just the same gentle attention he'd given Jason. "I'm Haley," she said, extending her hand. "Haley Hilton." "I'm Justin Bush," he replied, his handshake firm but brief. "This is my son, Nathan." Nathan stepped forward with the confidence of a kid who'd been raised to be polite. "Congratulations on graduating," he said to Jason, who was still holding the wooden keychain. Jason looked at Nathan for a long moment, then held up the carved fish. "It's smooth," he said simply. "Dad made that," Nathan said with obvious pride. "He makes lots of things." Haley looked at Justin with new eyes. "You carved this?" "Just a hobby," Justin said, his cheeks slightly red. "I work on small projects during breaks at the shop." "The shop?" "Auto repair, Henderson's over on 5th Street. The distance between their worlds had never felt more obvious. Haley ran a company with offices in 3 states. Justin fixed cars for a living. But standing there in that parking lot, watching their sons interact without any awareness of social barriers, those differences seemed suddenly irrelevant. I don't know how you knew what to do. Jason doesn't usually respond to strangers like that." Justin glanced at Nathan, something unspoken passing between them. "Sometimes you just recognize when someone's fighting a battle you understand." The weight of those words settled between them. Haley wanted to ask what he meant, but Jason tugged at her sleeve. "Can we go home now, Mom? I'm tired." "Of course, sweetheart." She looked back at Justin. Would it be okay if I called you sometime? Jason's been struggling, and you clearly have insights that could help." Justin hesitated, and Haley could see him weighing something in his mind. Finally, he nodded. "Sure, Nathan's got my number programmed in his phone, don't you, buddy?" Nathan rattled off the digits while Haley saved them in her contacts. As they prepared to leave, Jason suddenly stepped toward Justin. Thank you for the fish," he said clearly, making direct eye contact for just a moment. Justin's smile transformed his entire face. "You're very welcome, Jason. Take good care of it."
As they drove home in separate directions, one toward the affluent hills where Haley's modern house overlooked the city, the other toward a modest apartment complex where Justin and Nathan had built their life together, both parents found themselves thinking about unexpected connections and the strange way the universe sometimes brings people together. Haley couldn't stop replaying the moment when Jason had actually looked at a stranger and said, "Thank you." In 12 years, that had happened maybe 3 times. Justin couldn't shake the image of a powerful woman brought to tears by such a simple act of kindness. He'd read about Haley Hilton in the business section of the newspaper, the youngest female CEO in the state, worth more money than he'd seen in 10 lifetimes. But today, she just looked like a mom who needed help. Neither of them expected the phone call that would come 3 days later. "Justin, this is Haley Hilton from the graduation." Justin set down his coffee mug, surprised by the nervousness in her voice. In the background, he could hear what sounded like a business meeting winding down. "Of course. How's Jason doing?" Well, that's actually why I'm calling. He hasn't let go of that keychain since Saturday. His therapist wants to know if there are other techniques you used that might help." Justin looked across his small living room, where Nathan was doing homework at their kitchen table. Their apartment was clean but worn, furnished with second-hand pieces and filled with the evidence of their simple life together.
"I don't know about techniques," he said honestly. I've been there. When everything feels like too much and you need something to hold on to." The silence on the other end stretched long enough that Justin wondered if the call had dropped. "Haley? I'm here. Can I ask you something? You said you recognized the battle Jason was fighting. What did you mean by that?" Justin ran his hair through his head, debating how much to share. He'd learned to be careful about opening up to people. Single fathers didn't always get the benefit of the doubt. "Nathan's mom left when he was 3, he said finally. "She said she couldn't handle the pressure, the responsibility. For a while after that, Nathan would have these episodes where he'd just shut down, stop talking, stop eating. The world felt too big for him." "How did you help him through it?" "Time, patience, and a lot of trial and error. I started carving those little figures during the really hard nights when Nathan couldn't sleep. I gave my hands something to do while I figured out how to be enough for both of us." He could hear Haley's breathing on the other end, the kind of deep, thoughtful breathing of someone processing difficult emotions. "I've never met anyone who understood," she said quietly. "Jason's father, he couldn't handle it either. He said Jason would be better off in a specialized facility, that I was being selfish, trying to raise him at home. That must have been devastating." "It was, but it also made me more determined to prove that Jason belongs in this world, not hidden away from it."
Justin heard the steel in her voice, the same fierce protectiveness he recognized in his own heart. Single parents developed that armor out of necessity. "Would you—" Haley started, then stopped. "This might sound crazy, but would you consider meeting with Jason's support team? His therapist, his behavioral specialist? They're always looking for new approaches, and what you did worked better than anything we've tried." Justin was quiet for a moment. The idea of sitting in a room with medical professionals, discussing techniques and strategies, felt overwhelming. He didn't have degrees or certifications. He just had experience and instinct. "I don't know if I'd be much help. I'm not a professional. Neither am I when it comes to this. But you reached my son in a way that professionals haven't been able to. That matters more than any degree." Something in her voice convinced him. "Okay. When? Thursday afternoon? I could pick you up after you get off work." Justin almost laughed at the image of Haley Hilton pulling up to Henderson's Auto Repair in whatever expensive car she drove. "I'll meet you there. Just text me the address."
After they hung up, Nathan looked up from his homework. "Was that Jason's mom?" "Yeah, she wants me to talk to his doctors about ways to help him." Nathan nodded thoughtfully. "Jason seemed nice. Different, but nice. Can we see him again sometime?" Justin smiled at his son's easy acceptance of differences. At 12, Nathan had already learned that people came in all varieties, and that was perfectly normal. "Maybe, buddy. We'll see how it goes." But even as he said it, Justin found himself hoping it would go well. Something about Haley's vulnerability, her determination to fight for her son, had touched something in him he thought he'd carefully protect it. Thursday afternoon found Justin standing outside the Riverside Children's Development Center, feeling distinctly out of place in his work clothes. He'd changed into his cleanest jeans and a button-down shirt, but he still felt underdressed for whatever was about to happen. Haley appeared in the lobby exactly on time, dressed in another impeccable suit, but looking less composed than she had at graduation. She seemed nervous. "Thank you for coming," she said as they walked toward the conference room. "I know this is probably way outside your comfort zone. A little, but if it helps Jason, I'm glad to try."
The conference room held 4 people: Dr. Sarah Chen, Jason's developmental pediatrician; Rebecca Martinez, his behavioral therapist; Tom Bradley, his occupational therapist; and David Kim, the school district's autism specialist. They all had folders, notebooks, and the focused attention of professionals who dealt with complex cases every day. Haley made introductions, and Justin could see the polite curiosity in their faces. They were probably wondering what qualifications this auto mechanic had to offer insights into autism intervention strategies. "Tell us about Saturday," Dr. Chen said, her voice warm but clinical. "Haley described a significant breakthrough, but we'd like to hear your perspective on what happened." Justin took a breath, reminding himself that he was here for Jason, not to impress anyone. He was overwhelmed. All the sensory input, lights, sounds, crowds, it was too much for his system to process. "And your response was to approach him directly," Rebecca noted. "That's actually contrary to most de-escalation protocols, which recommend removing the child from the triggering environment." "I wasn't thinking about protocols," Justin said honestly. "I was thinking about a kid who was hurting and a mom who looked like she was drowning." Tom leaned forward. "You offered him a tactile object. Tell us about that choice." Justin pulled the matching keychain from his pocket. He'd carved 2, keeping one for himself. "It's smooth, substantial enough to focus on, but not complicated. When Nathan was younger and having rough nights, I'd carve these little figures. Gave us both something to do with our hands." "Bilateral stimulation," David murmured, making a note. "And the wood provides natural sensory input without being overwhelming." "I guess. I just know it helped."
Dr. Chen studied him with genuine interest. "Have you had formal training in autism support strategies?" "No, ma'am. Just experience, with a kid who needed help figuring out how to exist in a world that sometimes felt too big." The room went quiet. Finally, Rebecca spoke. "Can you tell us about that experience?" Justin glanced at Haley, who nodded encouragingly. So he told them about Nathan's early years, about the sleepless nights and the gradual discovery of what helped and what didn't. He described the trial and error, the small victories, the setbacks that taught him patience. "You developed an intuitive understanding of sensory regulation," Tom said, "and you implemented it instinctively." "I don't know about all that," Justin said. "I just paid attention to what Nathan needed." "That's actually quite sophisticated," Dr. Chen said. "Many parents struggle to read those subtle cues." As the meeting continued, Justin found himself relaxing. These weren't just academics discussing theory. They genuinely cared about helping Jason, and they were interested in practical approaches that worked in real-world situations. "Would you be willing to observe some of our sessions with Jason? Sometimes fresh eyes can spot things we miss."
Justin looked at Haley, who was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Hope, maybe, or gratitude. "If it would help," he said, "and if it's okay with Jason." "I think," Haley said quietly, "that Jason would like that very much." The first observation session was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Justin arranged to leave work early, something that required explaining to his boss Henderson that he was helping with a kid who had special needs. Henderson, a gruff man with a soft heart, just nodded and told him to take whatever time he needed. The therapy room was designed to be calming, soft lighting, neutral colors, carefully organized spaces for different activities. Jason was working with Rebecca on a social interaction exercise when Justin arrived. "Jason," Rebecca said gently, "do you remember Mr. Justin from graduation?" Jason looked up from the puzzle he was assembling, his eyes finding Justin immediately. A small smile crossed his face, and he held up the wooden keychain that was clipped to his belt loop. "I still have the fish," he said clearly. "I'm glad," Justin replied, settling into a chair nearby. How's it been working for you?
Jason considered this seriously. It helps when the noises get loud and when people ask too many questions. Rebecca exchanged glances with Justin. Getting Jason to articulate his coping strategies was usually much more difficult. What kinds of questions are hard? Justin asked. The ones that don't have right answers, like how are you feeling? Feelings aren't facts. They change too much. Justin nodded thoughtfully. That makes sense. Feelings can be confusing because they're not steady like facts are. Exactly. Jason's face lit up. Mom says I should talk about feelings more, but they're not logical. Maybe, Justin said carefully, the point isn't to make feelings logical. Maybe it's just to notice them and let them be whatever they are. Jason puzzled over this. Like, observing them? The way I observe birds? Sure. You don't try to make birds do different things, right? You just watch what they actually do. That makes sense, Jason said, returning to his puzzle with visibly less tension in his shoulders. Rebecca was taking notes rapidly. After the session, she pulled Justin aside. She said, "He connected with you faster than anyone I've seen. There's something about your communication style that resonates with him."
I think it's because I don't expect him to be different than he is, Justin said. Nathan taught me that kids usually know what they need, adults just have to listen. Over the following weeks, Justin became a regular part of Jason's support team. Not in any official capacity, but as someone who could offer a different perspective when traditional approaches hit walls. He watched Jason navigate social skills exercises, academic challenges, and sensory regulation activities. And slowly, he began to understand the complexity of what Haley dealt with every single day. It wasn't just the therapy appointments and the special accommodations. It was the constant advocacy, the explaining, the defending of Jason's right to exist in spaces that weren't designed for him. It was the exhaustion of being always alert, always ready to step in when the world proved too harsh for her son. During one particularly difficult session where Jason had a meltdown over a change in routine, Justin found himself sitting in the hallway with Haley while Rebecca worked to help Jason regulate.
Haley was quiet for a long time. No, but it would be easier. For everyone. Easier isn't always better, Justin said. Nathan could have been placed in foster care when his mom left. The state worker suggested it might be easier for everyone involved. But easier for who? Not for Nathan. How did you know you were doing the right thing? Justin thought about those early years, the constant doubt, the nights when he'd wondered if love was enough to make up for everything Nathan was missing. I didn't know, he said honestly. I just knew that giving up wasn't an option. And every small step forward proved that Nathan belonged with me, not somewhere else. Haley looked at him, with something deeper than gratitude. Thank you, for understanding, for not thinking I'm crazy for fighting so hard. You're not crazy. You're a mother who loves her son. That's the most sane thing in the world. The moment stretched between them, filled with recognition, and something neither of them was quite ready to name. From inside the therapy room, they could hear Jason's voice returning to normal volume, the crisis passing as Rebecca guided him through his coping strategies. He's going to be okay, Justin said softly. We all are. And for the first time in months, she actually believed it.
Have you ever found strength in the most unexpected friendship? Sometimes the people who understand our struggles best are the ones we never saw coming. The shift in their relationship happened gradually, like seasons changing. What started as shared concern for Jason evolved into something deeper, a genuine friendship built on mutual respect and understanding. Haley began calling Justin not just about Jason's therapy, but to talk through parenting challenges. Justin found himself looking forward to her voice on the other end of the line, the way she really listened when he talked about Nathan's achievements in school or his worries about being enough as a single father. 3 months after graduation, Haley did something she'd never done before. She invited Justin and Nathan to dinner at her house. Justin pulled up to the address she'd given him and sat in his truck for a moment, staring at the sprawling modern home that probably cost more than he'd make in a lifetime. The landscaping was immaculate, the driveway perfectly paved, the front door made of some rich, dark wood that caught the evening light. "Wow," Nathan said from the passenger seat. "Jason lives here?" "Looks like it," Justin replied, trying to keep his voice neutral. He'd known Haley was wealthy, but seeing it like this made the difference in their circumstances almost absurd.
But when Haley answered the door, dressed in jeans and a simple sweater instead of her usual business attire, her smile was so genuine that Justin's discomfort began to fade. "I'm so glad you could come," she said, hugging Nathan like they were old friends. "Jason's been asking all week if you were really coming over." The house was beautiful, but not cold, filled with Jason's artwork on the refrigerator, family photos, and the comfortable clutter of real life. Jason appeared from what looked like a family room, still clutching his wooden keychain. "Nathan, come see my rock collection," he said, grabbing Nathan's hand and pulling him toward the stairs. "Be careful, both of you," Haley called after them, then turned to Justin with a slightly embarrassed smile. "He's been organizing that collection for 3 days, getting ready to show Nathan." "Nathan's been excited too," Justin said. "He really likes Jason." They stood in the foyer for a moment, and Justin realized how long it had been since he'd been in someone else's home as a guest. Single fathers with limited income didn't get invited to dinner parties often. "Can I get you something to drink? Coffee? Beer? Wine?" "Beer would be great."
She led him through a kitchen that looked like something from a magazine, all granite countertops and stainless steel appliances, but the table was set with simple plates, and something that smelled amazing was simmering on the stove. "I hope you like chili," she said, pulling 2 beers from the refrigerator. "It's one of the few things I actually know how to cook well." "Smells perfect," Justin said, accepting the beer and looking around the space. "This is a beautiful home." "Thank you. Sometimes I think it's too big for just the 2 of us, but Jason likes having space to spread out his projects." They could hear the boys upstairs, Nathan's voice full of excitement as Jason explained the different types of rocks he'd collected. The sound made them both smile. "It's nice," Haley said quietly, hearing Jason be the expert for once. Usually he's the one struggling to keep up. Nathan's good at that, finding what people are passionate about and getting them to share it. He gets that from his father. Justin felt heat rise in his cheeks. Compliments still made him uncomfortable, especially from someone like Haley. He's a good kid. So is Jason. Different, but good. As they prepared dinner together, Haley ladling chili while Justin buttered bread, the conversation flowed easily. They talked about their kids, their work, their challenges. But underneath the everyday topics, Justin sensed something else building between them. A recognition, maybe, or possibility. When they called the boys down for dinner, Jason chattered excitedly about showing Nathan his room, his books, his computer programs. Nathan listened with genuine interest, asking questions that made Jason light up with pride. "Mom," Jason said suddenly, "Nathan says his dad builds things, real things, not just toys." "I don't build much," Justin said quickly. "Just carve some small pieces in my spare time." "But you built a wheelchair ramp," Nathan added proudly. "And you built the new shelving in our apartment." "You built a wheelchair ramp?" Haley asked, her voice curious. "Our neighbor's husband died last year, and she was having trouble getting in and out of her place. It wasn't a big deal." That's really kind." Justin shifted uncomfortably. He didn't do those things to be kind. He did them because they needed doing. But the way Haley was looking at him made him feel seen in a way that was both warming and terrifying. After dinner, while the boys played video games in the family room, Justin insisted on helping with dishes. As they worked side by side at the kitchen sink,
Haley spoke quietly. Jason hasn't had a friend over in almost 2 years. Other kids either don't understand him or they treat him like he's fragile. But Nathan just accepts him. Kids are usually better at that than adults. Nathan learned it from somewhere. Their hands brushed as she handed him a plate to dry, and Justin felt something electric pass between them. When he looked up, Haley was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. As they pulled into their apartment complex, Justin found himself thinking about the evening, the easy conversation, the comfortable silences, the moment at the sink when everything had shifted. And despite all the logical reasons why pursuing anything with Haley Hilton was a terrible idea, he couldn't stop hoping his phone would ring. It did ring, 3 days later. "Justin, it's Haley. I hope I'm not bothering you." "Not at all. Is everything okay?" "Actually, yes, better than okay. Jason had his best day at school this week, and his teacher said he talked about Nathan and your visit for 20 minutes during sharing time." Justin smiled, settling into his armchair after a long day at the shop. "Nathan's been asking when we can see Jason again, too." "That's actually why I'm calling. There's a science museum exhibit Jason's been wanting to see, but I've been putting it off because crowds are usually difficult for him. But with Nathan there as a buffer..." "You want company?" "I want help," she said honestly. "And I want Jason to have a normal kid experience with a friend." "When?" "Saturday afternoon. I could pick you both up." Justin almost said yes immediately, then stopped himself. "Haley, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Are we doing this for the kids or for us?" The silence stretched long enough that Justin wondered if he'd overstepped. Finally, Haley's voice came back, quieter than before. "Does it matter?" "It might. To what happens next." "What do you want to happen next?" The question hung between them, loaded with possibility and danger in equal measure. Justin thought about all the reasons this was complicated, their different circumstances, their children's needs, the public scrutiny that would inevitably come with dating someone like Haley Hilton. Then he thought about the way she looked at him in her kitchen, like he was someone worth seeing. "I want to find out," he said quietly. "So do I. Sometimes the most important conversations happen in the spaces between words, and sometimes admitting you want something is the first step toward discovering it might actually be possible."
The Science Museum was crowded, exactly as Haley had feared. Families moved in clusters through the exhibits, voices echoing off the high ceilings, interactive displays beeping and whirring with constant activity. Jason stood at the entrance, his body tensing as he took in the sensory overload. But before Haley could start implementing their usual coping strategies, Nathan stepped beside his friend. "It's pretty loud, huh? Want to start with something quieter?" Jason nodded gratefully, and Nathan led him toward a display about minerals that was tucked away in a corner, naturally quieter than the more popular interactive exhibits. Haley and Justin followed, watching their sons navigate the space together. Nathan seemed instinctively aware of Jason's needs, without making a big deal about accommodating them. When Jason wanted to read every word of an information plaque, Nathan waited patiently. When the crowd around a dinosaur skeleton got too dense, Nathan suggested they come back later. "He's remarkable," Haley said quietly as they watched Nathan help Jason with a geology quiz station. "He said good practice reading people's needs," Justin replied. "Single-parent households teach kids to be pretty aware of their environment." "Is that why he's so mature?" Justin considered this. Maybe. Or maybe he's just naturally empathetic. His mom used to say he could sense her moods before she even knew what they were. It was the first time Justin had mentioned Nathan's mother without bitterness, and Haley noticed. "Do you miss her?" she asked gently. "I miss the idea of what we might have been," Justin said after a moment, "but I don't miss the reality of what we were. She wasn't happy, and that made all of us unhappy." They paused near a display about space exploration, where Jason was excitedly explaining orbital mechanics to Nathan, while other visitors listened with growing amazement. "He's going to be something special," Justin said, watching Jason gesture animatedly. "He already is. The world just doesn't always recognize it." "Neither did I at first," Justin admitted. "When I saw you two at graduation, I almost didn't get up. Part of me figured it wasn't my business."
"What changed your mind?" Justin thought back to that moment. The sound of Jason's distress, the judgment in people's faces, the helplessness in Haley's posture.
I remembered what it felt like to be alone with a struggling kid and have everyone watching like you were doing something wrong. Were you? Alone? I mean? Completely. Nathan's mom left when things got hard, and both our families thought I should put him in care. They said a single man couldn't raise a child properly, especially one with issues. Haley turned to face him fully. Nathan has issues? Had. Selective mutism, severe anxiety, some sensory processing stuff. Nothing as complex as what Jason deals with, but enough that people had opinions about what I should do. What did you do? Ignored them. Figured if I was going to fail at being Nathan's father, at least I'd fail while trying instead of failing by giving up. The fierce protectiveness in his voice was familiar to Haley. She heard it in her own voice whenever she advocated for Jason, but hearing it from someone who'd walked a similar path made her feel less alone than she had in years. "Dad, Mom!" Both boys were running toward them, Jason's face bright with excitement. "They have a planetarium show in 10 minutes. Can we go?" Haley hesitated. Dark spaces with loud sound systems were usually problematic for Jason, but he seemed so eager, and Nathan was beside him, a steady presence. "What do you think?" Justin asked Jason directly. "Will the dark and the music be okay for you?"
Jason considered this seriously, holding his wooden keychain. "If it gets too much, can I leave?" "Absolutely," Haley said. "Then I want to try." The planetarium show was about the formation of solar systems, the narrator's voice calm and measured as stars wheeled overhead in the darkened dome. Jason sat between Nathan and his mother, focused intently on the display above. Halfway through, he reached over and took Nathan's hand, not in distress, but in excitement, wanting to share the wonder of what they were seeing. Haley felt tears prick her eyes. Jason rarely initiated physical contact, even with her. The fact that he felt safe enough with Nathan to reach out. She glanced at Justin and found him watching their sons with the same odd expression she felt. When he caught her looking, he smiled and something warm unfurled in her chest. After the show, they walked through the museum gift shop, where Jason spent 20 minutes carefully selecting a book about astronomy while Nathan waited without complaint. As they headed toward the exit, Jason suddenly stopped. "Mr. Justin," he said, "thank you for bringing Nathan. This was the best museum day I've ever had." "Thank you for inviting us. I had a great time too."
Can we do it again sometime? Justin glanced at Haley, who nodded. I'd like that. In the parking lot, as they prepared to go their separate ways, Nathan lingered near Jason. "Hey," he said quietly, "I just wanted you to know, you're really smart. Like, smarter than anyone in my class. I hope the kids at your school know that." Jason beamed. "Some of them do. The ones who matter." As they drove away, Justin found himself thinking about second chances and unexpected connections. In his rearview mirror, he could see Haley's car following the same route for a few miles before they turned toward their different neighborhoods. "Dad," Nathan said, "are you going to ask Jason's mom out on a real date?" Justin nearly swerved. "What makes you think I want to do that?" "The way you look at her. Like you look at the sunsets you think I don't notice you watching." Sometimes his son was too perceptive for his own good. "It's complicated, buddy. Because she's rich? Because we're different in a lot of ways. But you like the same things that matter, like taking care of your kids and being kind to people."
Justin pulled into their apartment complex, considering Nathan's words. Maybe his 12-year-old son understood something about compatibility that adults overcomplicated. His phone buzzed with a text from Haley. "Thank you for today. Jason hasn't stopped talking about the planetarium. Neither have I." He stared at the message for a long moment before typing back, "Would you like to continue the conversation over dinner? Somewhere without kids and astronomy exhibits?" The reply came quickly. "I'd like that very much." Their first official date was at a small Italian restaurant downtown, the kind of place with checkered tablecloths and family photos on the walls. Haley had suggested somewhere more upscale, but Justin had politely declined. He wanted to be somewhere he could afford to pay for dinner, even if she protested. She arrived looking beautiful, but nervous, dressed more casually than usual, in a simple blue dress that brought out her eyes. When she slid into the booth across from him, Justin felt the same electric awareness he'd experienced in her kitchen. "I haven't been on a date in 3 years," she admitted, fidgeting with her napkin.
I haven't been on one in 5, so we're both out of practice." The confession relaxed them both, and conversation began to flow.
They talked about their children, their work, their dreams that had been put on hold for practical concerns. But they also talked about books, movies, the way morning light looked different in different seasons. "Can I ask you something personal?" Haley said as they shared dessert. "Sure. What do you want, Justin? I mean, beyond taking care of Nathan and getting through each day, what do you want for yourself?" It was a question no one had asked him in years. Since becoming a single father, his wants had narrowed to Nathan's needs and basic survival. "I want to build things," he said slowly. "Real things. Maybe furniture, houses. I want to create something that lasts." "What's stopping you?" "Time, money, training." He shrugged. "Life." But if those obstacles weren't there, Justin considered this. "I'd probably go back to school, study architecture or construction management, start my own company maybe." "That sounds wonderful. What about you? What do you want beyond running a successful business and raising Jason?" Haley was quiet for a long moment. "I want to matter. Not just financially, but really matter. I want to solve problems that actually help people, not just increase profit margins."
Like what? Accessibility technology, adaptive learning tools, things that could make the world easier for kids like Jason. The passion in her voice was unmistakable, and Justin found himself leaning forward, captivated by this glimpse behind her professional facade. "Why don't you?" "Same reasons as you, I suppose. Fear of failure mostly. What if I give up financial stability to chase meaning and end up with neither? What if you end up with both?" Their eyes met across the table, and Justin saw something shift in her expression. Hope, maybe. Or possibility. "You know," she said quietly, "I've been thinking about what you said, about recognizing battles you fought yourself." "What about it?" "I think I've been fighting the wrong battle, trying to prove Jason and I belong in a world that wasn't made for us, instead of working to make the world more inclusive. Those don't have to be mutually exclusive." "No, they don't." She smiled, and it transformed her entire face. "Thank you." "For what?" "For reminding me that I don't have to choose between practical and meaningful."
As they walked to their cars after dinner, the evening air cool around them, Justin felt something he hadn't experienced in years, the thrill of real connection with someone who saw him clearly and still wanted to be there. "I had a wonderful time," Haley said, stopping beside her car. "So did I." They stood facing each other in the parking lot, the weight of possibility hanging between them. Justin wanted to kiss her, wanted to close the space between them and see if the spark he felt was real. But he also wanted to be careful, to protect what was growing between them from moving too fast. "Haley," he said softly. "Yes?" "I'd like to see you again. Just us, I mean. Not because of the kids or therapy sessions or museum trips." "I'd like that too." She stepped closer, close enough that he could smell her perfume, see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. When she reached up to touch his cheek, her fingers were soft against his skin. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me." This time, when she stepped away, it felt like a promise instead of a retreat. Have you ever felt the moment when friendship transforms into something deeper? When you realize that someone hasn't just entered your life, they've become essential to it.
Over the following weeks, they fell into a rhythm, family activities with both boys who would become inseparable, quiet dinners when they could arrange babysitting, long phone conversations after the children were asleep, talking about everything and nothing until one of them noticed it was past midnight. Justin found himself looking forward to Haley's calls with an intensity that sometimes worried him. He'd been alone for so long that the idea of depending on someone else's presence in his life felt dangerous. But Haley had a way of making him feel like his thoughts mattered, like his experiences were valuable, like he was more than just Nathan's father. Haley, for her part, discovered that Justin's calm presence in her life was becoming addictive. In a world where everyone wanted something from her, her time, her money, her influence, Justin just wanted her company. He listened when she talked about work frustrations, offered perspective without trying to fix everything, and made her laugh in ways she'd forgotten were possible. The shift towards something serious happened on a rainy Thursday evening when Haley called Justin in tears. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "I know it's late, but I didn't know who else to call." "What happened?" Justin sat up in bed, immediately alert.
Jason had a really bad day at school. One of the kids started a rumor that he's contagious, that autism spreads like a disease. By lunch, half his class was avoiding him. Justin felt anger burn in his chest. Where is he now? He's in his room. He won't talk to me, won't eat dinner. He just keeps saying that maybe the other kid is right. Maybe there is something wrong with him that I can't fix. I'm coming over. Justin, you don't have to. I'm coming over. Give me 20 minutes. He left Nathan with their neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, explaining only that he needed to help a friend with their child. By the time he reached Haley's house, she was waiting at the door, her eyes red from crying. "He's been like this for 3 hours," she said, leading him upstairs. "I've tried everything." Jason's room was dark, except for a small lamp. The boy was curled up on his bed, still wearing his school clothes, clutching his wooden keychain so tightly his knuckles were white. "Hey, buddy," Justin said quietly, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Your mom told me you had a rough day." Jason didn't respond, but Justin could see he was listening.
"Want to know something?" Justin continued. "When Nathan was about your age, a kid at school told everyone that Nathan was weird because he didn't talk much. Said that made him creepy and that other kids should stay away from him. What did Nathan do?" Jason's voice was muffled against his pillow. "He came home crying, just like you did. Asked me if there really was something wrong with him that made other people uncomfortable. What did you tell him?" Justin was quiet for a moment, remembering that awful afternoon when Nathan's confidence had been shattered by casual cruelty. "I told him that some people are afraid of things they don't understand, and that when people are afraid, they sometimes say mean things to make themselves feel safer. But that doesn't make it true." "No, it doesn't." "You know what else I told him?" Jason turned to face Justin, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "I told him that the right people, the people worth knowing, would see how special he was, and that the wrong people, well, their opinions didn't matter anyway." "Did Nathan believe you?" "Eventually. And you know what? He was right to. Nathan has amazing friends now who think his quiet thoughtfulness is one of his best qualities." Jason sat up slowly, considering this. "Mom says I'm not broken, just different. Your mom's right. Different isn't wrong, Jason. It's just different. But it's hard sometimes." "Yeah, it is. Being different takes courage. But you know what?" "What?" "I think you're one of the bravest kids I know." Jason's face crumpled, and suddenly he was crying, not the overwhelmed screaming from graduation, but the deep, relieved sobs of a child who'd been holding too much inside. Justin pulled him into a hug, and Jason clung to him like a lifeline. Over the boy's head, Justin could see Haley in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. When Jason finally calmed down, he was exhausted but peaceful. Justin stayed until he fell asleep, then followed Haley downstairs to the kitchen. "How did you know exactly what to say?" she asked, her voice wondering. "Because I've been there. Different circumstances, same pain. He's never let anyone but me comfort him like that. Maybe he needed to hear it from someone who understood what it felt like to be different." Haley moved closer, until she was standing directly in front of him. "Thank you for dropping everything and coming here, for knowing how to reach him, for being exactly what we needed." "Haley." She kissed him, soft at first, tentative, then deeper when he responded. All the careful distance they'd been maintaining collapsed in that moment, replaced by something raw and honest and necessary. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. "I've been wanting to do that for weeks," she whispered. "So have I.
Stay, she said. Not for anything inappropriate. Just stay. I don't want to be alone tonight, and I don't think you should drive home this late. Justin thought about all the reasons staying was complicated, then thought about how it felt to hold her, to be needed by both her and Jason in such a fundamental way. Okay, he said quietly. I'll take the couch. Thank you. But when he woke up the next morning, she was curled up beside him on the large sectional sofa, her head on his shoulder, her hand resting over his heart. And for the first time in years, Justin felt like he was exactly where he belonged.
Jason found them like that when he came downstairs for breakfast. But instead of being confused or upset, he just smiled. "Mr. Justin, are you going to be here for pancakes?" "If that's okay with you," Justin replied, careful not to disturb Haley, who was still sleeping. "It's very okay. Mom makes really good pancakes, but she's better at making them when she's happy." "Is she happy?" Jason considered this with his usual seriousness. "Yes." She smiles more now. "Since we met you and Nathan." "Good. I'm glad." As if summoned by their voices, Haley stirred, blinking awake slowly. When she realized where she was, color flooded her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she started, but Justin stopped her with a gentle touch. "Don't be. I slept better than I have in months." She smiled, and Jason was right. She did look happier than Justin had ever seen her. "Pancakes?" she suggested. "Pancakes," Justin agreed. As they moved around the kitchen together, Haley mixing batter while Justin set the table and Jason organized his school supplies, it felt natural in a way that surprised them all, like a family that had been practicing this routine for years instead of hours. "Mr. Justin," said Jason as they sat down to eat, "will you tell Nathan that I figured out how to handle mean kids?" "What did you figure out?" "That they're just scared of things being different than they expect. And that's their problem, not mine." "That's very wise, Jason." "Nathan's dad taught me that," Jason said proudly, then paused. "Are you Nathan's dad and also kind of my dad now?" The question hung in the air, loaded with meaning and hope, and the terrifying possibility of forever. Justin glanced at Haley, who was watching him with careful attention. "Would you like me to be kind of your dad too?" "Yes, please." "Then I guess we'll have to figure out how to make that work." Jason beamed and returned to his pancakes as if he'd just solved the most important problem in the world, which Justin realized maybe he had. The conversation about what they were becoming happened that evening, after Jason was in bed and they were sitting in Haley's living room, the space between them on the couch both intimate and charged with possibility. "Are we really doing this? Building something together?" "Do you want to?" "Yes, but it's complicated." "Everything worthwhile is complicated."
Haley curled up against his side, her head finding the hollow of his shoulder like it belonged there. People are going to have opinions about us, about the kids, about how fast this is moving. Let them have opinions. They're not living our lives. The press might get interested when people find out I'm dating a broke auto mechanic, a good man who makes me happy. Justin's arms tightened around her. "Are you sure about this, Haley? Really sure? Because once we cross this line, there's no going back to just being friends. I've never been more sure of anything. What about Jason? What if this doesn't work out and he gets hurt? What if it does work out and we miss it because we're too scared to try?" Justin considered this, thinking about all the ways his life had changed since that graduation ceremony. How Jason's trust had opened something in his heart he'd thought was permanently closed. How Haley's presence had made him remember who he was beyond just Nathan's father. "Okay," he said finally. "Let's do this. But we take it slow. Make sure the kids are okay with each step. Agreed. And if it gets too complicated, if the attention becomes too much, we'll figure it out together." The promise settled between them, and suddenly the future that had seemed impossible just months ago began to feel not just possible, but inevitable. They talked until late into the night, making plans and sharing fears, building the foundation of something that could sustain both their children and their growing love. And when Justin finally went home, it was with the understanding that everything had changed, and somehow that felt exactly right.
When do you know that someone has become essential to your story? Sometimes it's not a single moment, but the accumulation of all the small moments that matter. 6 months later, they were a family in everything but paperwork. Nathan and Jason had become brothers in the way that children do when they choose each other, completely, loyally, with the kind of bond that makes adults slightly jealous of how easily kids navigate love. Justin had moved into Haley's house not because his apartment wasn't adequate, but because coming home to each other had become the best part of everyone's day. He had insisted on paying rent despite Haley's protests because he needed to contribute something tangible to their shared life.
The media attention had been intense but brief. A few articles about the CEO dating the mechanic, some speculation about gold diggers and publicity stunts. But when it became clear that neither Justin nor Haley were interested in playing up the angle for attention, the press moved on to more dramatic stories. The real test had come from their families. Haley's parents, sophisticated East Coast money, who had never quite approved of her decision to raise Jason herself, were horrified by her choice to date down. They made their disapproval clear during a tense dinner where they questioned Justin's motivations and suggested Haley was having some kind of breakdown. Justin's father, a blue-collar man who'd worked construction his whole life, was equally confused by his son's relationship with someone way out of his league. He worried Justin was setting himself up for heartbreak and Nathan for disappointment. But the children had been their salvation. When Haley's parents saw how Jason bloomed around Justin, how confident and happy he'd become, their objections began to crumble. When Justin's father watched Nathan and Jason together, saw the genuine brotherhood between them, he started to understand that some families are chosen rather than born. The breakthrough came when Jason had a severe meltdown at a family gathering at Haley's parents' house. Nothing seemed to help until Justin knelt down and offered the same calm presence he'd given at graduation. Within minutes, Jason was regulated and peaceful. Haley's mother had watched with tears in her eyes. "I've never seen anyone reach him like that," she'd whispered to her daughter later. Maybe I misjudged." It wasn't immediate acceptance, but it was the beginning of understanding. Justin's father came around when he saw how happy Nathan was, how naturally he'd taken to having Jason as a brother. "Kids got good instincts," he'd told Justin. "Always has. If he likes them, they must be all right." On a warm spring evening, exactly 2 years after graduation, they were all in the backyard of what was now unquestionably their home. Nathan and Jason were working on a science project together, while Justin grilled dinner and Haley worked in the garden she'd started. "Dad," Nathan called out, "can you help us with this bridge design?" "Which dad?" Jason asked, genuinely confused. Both men looked up, Justin from the grill where he was monitoring hamburgers, and Haley from where she was pulling weeds from between the tomato plants. "Either one," Nathan said with a grin. "You're both good at building things." It was true. In the months since they'd become a family, Justin had started taking online classes in construction management. Haley had used her business connections to help him find internship opportunities that worked around his schedule. His dream of building things was becoming reality, slowly but steadily. Haley, meanwhile, had restructured her company to focus on accessibility technology. The transition had been challenging, but the work was meaningful in ways that made the financial risk worthwhile. Her first product, adaptive learning software designed specifically for children with autism, was set to launch in the fall.
"Mr. Justin," Jason said, looking up from his project, "will you teach me how to carve wood like you do?" "Would you like to learn?" "Yes, please. I want to make something for Mom." "What kind of something?" Jason thought carefully. "Something that shows how happy our family makes me." Justin's throat tightened with emotion. 2 years ago, he'd been a single father struggling to make ends meet, convinced that love and hard work were all he had to offer. Now he was part of something bigger and more beautiful than he had ever imagined possible. "I think that's a wonderful idea," he said. "We'll start this weekend." As they sat down to dinner, the conversation flowing easily between work stories, school updates, and weekend plans, Justin found himself thinking about unexpected blessings and second chances. He looked around the table at Nathan, confident and happy and proud of his unusual family, at Jason, thriving in ways no one had dared hoped for, and at Haley, beautiful and successful and somehow, miraculously, his. "What are you thinking about?" Haley asked, noticing his expression. "Just this. All of this." "Good thoughts?" "The best thoughts." After dinner, when the boys were upstairs getting ready for bed, Justin and Haley sat on the back porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. "Do you ever think about that day at graduation?" Haley asked, her head resting on his shoulder. "Every day." "What do you think would have happened if you hadn't stood up?" Justin considered this. "I think we would have found each other eventually. Maybe it would have taken longer, maybe it would have happened differently, but I think some connections are inevitable." "Why?" "Because some people are meant to find each other, meant to help each other become who they're supposed to be." "And who are you supposed to be?" "A father to 2 amazing kids, a partner to someone I love more than I knew was possible, a man who builds things that last." "That sounds perfect. What about you? Who are you supposed to be?" "A mother who never stops fighting for her son, a woman who uses her success to make the world more inclusive, someone who finds love in the most unexpected place and isn't afraid to choose it." "That sounds perfect too."
They sat in comfortable silence as darkness settled around them, listening to the boys' voices drifting down from upstairs, content in the knowledge that they'd created something rare and precious. "Justin," Haley said softly. "Yeah? Thank you for standing up that day, for seeing us, for staying. Thank you for letting me." Inside the house, they could hear Jason reading aloud to Nathan, his voice clear and confident as he shared one of his favorite astronomy books. It was a sound that never failed to make both parents smile, proof that love could triumph over difference, that families could be chosen as well as born, that sometimes the most unthinkable thing was simply believing in the possibility of happiness. Love doesn't always arrive the way we expect it to. Sometimes it comes disguised as kindness to a stranger, as understanding in a moment of crisis, as the willingness to see beyond surface differences to the heart of who someone really is. Friends, if this story touched your heart the way it touched mine, if it reminded you that sometimes the most profound transformations begin with the simple decision to stand up and help when someone needs it most, please don't just watch and walk away. Hit that subscribe button and join our Soul Lift Stories family. Share this story with someone who needs to remember that the most beautiful families are often the ones we choose for ourselves.